Well, hello and welcome back to Extraordinary Connection. I'm Pastor Devin, and I'm so glad that you've been able to take these few minutes from your day to join us here on the site. You know, over the past few days, I've found myself thinking and considering the topic of leaders and leadership. When we really stop to think about it, we make choices of what leaders we will follow and listen to on a pretty regular basis. We do it on the national, state, and local levels of government, with our jobs, those managers or bosses that we have. On a team, we trust the coach, or in a band, or choir, the director, we trust them to lead us. And in the church, of course, there's the pastor and those other leadership positions that we trust will act in our best interests. And some of these are choices that we have more control over than others. Sometimes there are those that are forced on us by change. Maybe it's not a change that we necessarily wanted. But when we do have a choice or a say in the matter, how is it that we make those choices? What do we consider? What is important? What concessions are we willing to make? What are the make it or break it stipulations? These questions were in my thoughts this week because I came across a comic strip, one that made me stop and think about how it is that we make those decisions sometimes of who we're going to follow, who we're going to trust to lead us. Let me put this up here for you real quick. There it is. Follow me, the person on the left there is saying. I will teach you to love your neighbor. I'll teach you to love your enemies. But then we hear, follow me, from the person standing on the opposite hill. I hate all the same people you hate. And what does that final panel show us? It shows us where the crowd has gathered. And while I'm sure this comic was created or intended to be a point of humor, when I really stopped to think about it, when I really thought about it, I find myself further from feeling funny or humorous, and I really find myself sitting much closer to sadness. Because really, doesn't it hit just a little too close to the mark? How much easier is it to be rallied to the side of an individual or cause because of how much we dislike, even how much we hate the other side? And those feelings of hate, they can have a strong pull on us. And there's no shortage of people who will gladly use them to draw us to their side, to join their team, so that we will follow them. I believe it was just last week that I mentioned the documentary that's been airing on ESPN over the past several weeks, The Last Dance, as it was titled. It followed the Chicago Bulls teams of the 1990s, a team that at the very least deserves its place in the discussion of the best of teams of all time. But there were two things that really stood out to me as I watched the finale the other night. The first was the leadership of the coach of that team, Phil Jackson. He had some larger-than-life and talented figures on that team. Of course, having arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest player of all times in Michael Jordan, brought plenty of positives to that team, but it did also present plenty of challenges. On top of that, he had the other members of the team, including Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr, and the otherworldly individual that was and is Dennis Rodman. But throughout that series, you see that this team, they bought into their coach's vision. He saw their individual talents, but he took those talents and he made them into a team. And they shared a common goal. They wanted to win a championship. And then another, and another, and another, and another, and another. And you know what they did? They did because they were willing to follow the person they'd placed their trust in. They were willing to buy in as a team. Even as all those individuals, they had their own hopes and dreams and desires, but they were led by someone they trusted, someone they believed had their best interest in mind, someone they were willing to follow. And the second thing that's stayed with me from that documentary, it was a quote from Michael Jordan, without a doubt the leader of the team on the court, the one that they turned to when things were hard or difficult, the one that they trusted would lead them to success. But when asked about how people might perceive him when they saw how hard he pushed his teammates, that in fact he might very well come off as a bit of a bad guy or even a bully, this is what he said. Winning has a price. Leadership has a price. I pushed people when they didn't want to be pushed. I challenged people when they didn't want to be challenged. But I never asked them to do something I wasn't willing to do myself. Leadership has a price. I never asked them to do something I wasn't willing to do myself. Those words have rang in my ears these last few days. If we're going to follow someone, if we're going to allow them to lead us, how do we make that right choice? Do we give that right to someone who can rile up the crowd, who can bring us together on the common ground of our dislike for another person or another group of people? Or do we choose to follow a leader who can see the individuals that we are, that can acknowledge our strengths and our weaknesses? A leader who's willing to walk the path with us, someone who is willing to do the work. I don't think I have to tell you which category of leader we find when we look to the Gospels. And while there are plenty of examples of this, perhaps one of the simplest is found in Mark chapter 1, verse 17. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." You see, I think this is significant because while Jesus said, "I will make you fish for people," he didn't simply hand them the net and say, "Good luck, go do the work." He didn't send them out to do the work all by themselves. No, Jesus, he led from the front. He led the charge and went out in search of those people. And as he found them, he provided the example of how to do the work, how to love their neighbors, how to love their enemies. He never asked them to do a thing he wasn't willing to do himself. Jesus taught them to serve by being a servant. And at the same time, he taught them to lead by being a leader. And we still have that same choice to make. The same one that the fishermen made along the shores of the Sea of Galilee that day. Because the voices still call out, "Follow me." But which voice are you going to follow today? The one that promises us what we want to hear, the one that would separate and divide with hate and fear? Or the one that has and continues to speak from a place of love and truth? The one that continues to lead us in the ways of grace and peace? Remember Paul's words to the church in Galatia. "So let us not grow weary in doing what is right, for we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up." Let us not grow weary. Let us do what is right. Let us love as ones who have been led by the Lord. And as we go this day, may the grace of the Lord Jesus be with each one of us. Take care, my friends, and God bless.